guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to make your makeup look last all day. The most frequently asked question that I get by family, friends, strangers is, how is your makeup still looking that perfect? How is it not creasing? Okay, now I just sound like I'm so cocky. I'm like, how am I so perfect? I'm not kidding. It's the question that I get asked the most all the time when I'm wearing a full face of makeup is, how is it not moving? I've been with you all day long and it still looks the same. And I was sitting around on Mother's Day talking to my family about, what do I film next? I really wanna do something that's gonna like teach my subscribers, because like I just love makeup and I don't wanna like fall off of that on YouTube. I wanna like stay really zoned in on makeup. And everyone was like, how does your makeup look good all day? Like I'll apply it at 9 a.m. and then at 10 p.m. I'm still getting compliments. And they're like, how does that happen? I was like, perfect, let's do that. So today in this video, I'm gonna be giving you a total breakdown of all my tips and tricks for my skin, which is a little bit of dry to normal, mainly normal. I also give tips for oily skin and everything in between. So I really hope that you guys enjoy and hopefully you learn something in today's video. If you have tricks that helps you and your makeup last all day and I didn't mention it, please leave it in the comment section down below so we can learn from each other. And that's it. I'm gonna stop rambling and jump into this video because I'm sure it's gonna be a hefty one because there's a lot I gotta say. So yeah, just keep watching. All right, so let's get started. First things first, obviously you wanna go in with freshly cleansed skin. You know what? Let me go put on a shirt real quick. All right, we're back. So first things first, when it comes to making sure that your makeup is gonna last all day long, it always starts with prepping of the skin. You absolutely need a primer no matter what your needs are. If you're oily, if you have large pores, whatever it may be, I suggest a primer. If you don't have a primer, just make sure that your skin has some tackiness to it, meaning cleanse and moisturize. Make sure though that it is not too tacky, it's not too sticky. There's a fine line because if you start getting kind of like too greasy, too oily, and you put on too many serums, now the makeup is gonna slip right off and it's gonna totally negate everything that we're gonna do over the next 30, 40 minutes, however long this video takes. Can I get a zoom in this bitch? So I washed and moisturized my skin probably about 3 hours ago at this point, and that's perfectly fine. Like I really can't feel anything on my skin, so I am going to prime. I'm using my favorite primer, which is really expensive and totally unnecessary, but once you start it, you can't stop, and it's just like sinful how good this is. It is by Sisley, and it is, it's the best one. It leaves your skin like the perfect amount of tackiness and just grabs onto your product and holds it forever. But primer is not the only thing that's going to make your makeup last. If you don't have the right techniques and do the right routine and use the right products, it doesn't matter how good your primer is, it's still gonna slip away throughout the day. That's just my personal opinion. Booyah. All right. I even said booyah. So I was like, where did that come from? It's all booyah. I'm like, booyah. But how fetch is my straw with my background? I'm going to put another primer on top, only in the T-zone. This again is by Sisley. Totally not necessary to do this step whatsoever, but it's something that I've been doing recently and I see a really big difference. This is a pore minimizing primer. There's also a really great one by Dr. Brandt. You can get it at Ulta, maybe Sephora, but definitely Ulta. And it really, like if you have deep pores, really fills it in. I only do this on the T-zone because this is the only issue where I see pores. Thank you. This is what happened at 28 years old. It's like all of a sudden I see pores all over my nose and I'm like, great. So we're just gonna fill those bad boys in so I don't have to worry about it when I'm putting my concealer and foundation on. I really am sweating.
I know it's very hot in here.
Andrew, turn it down.
I definitely have boob sweat. I can feel it.
I have pit sweat. Let's hit it and then quit it. So now that we have prepped the skin, I'm gonna go in with my foundation. Of course, nothing super fancy about today's video. You're gonna see me do basically all the same stuff that I always do. I'm just gonna be telling you why I do it and why I do it in order to make my makeup last the entire day. I'm gonna be going in with, as always, the Too Faced Born This Way foundation. This is not technically a long wear foundation. It just says that it's medium to full coverage and it's oil free. I personally don't think that you need a full coverage or long wear foundation in order to make your makeup last all day. It's just about the way that you apply it and the way you set it. So any foundation that you have will absolutely work. The only thing is that if it's like a CC cream or a BB cream or like a tinted moisturizer and it's something really sheer and it's got a lot of like dewy effect to it, it is going to tend to slip off your skin faster than an actual foundation. That's just life. Anytime that I put like a little bit of product on my skin and it's sheer, it doesn't matter how I set it, it does move on my face. Where if I use an actual foundation, that's where you start to have, what's the word I'm looking for? Start to have accomplishments, progress. That's where you start to have good results. And we're back, people. I'm gonna go in with a damp beauty sponge. Once again, make sure that it is damp. It doesn't wanna be wet. You should be able to squeeze it really hard in like a paper towel or an actual towel or something and not feel water going like seeping out of it. It should be nice and damp, but not wet, because if it's wet, you're not gonna get as much product on the skin. You're not gonna be able to press it in the skin. And if it's too dry, it's gonna be the same thing. It's just gonna sit on your sponge and it's not gonna be pressed in to the pores. So when you are applying it with a damp sponge, you really wanna make sure that you're pressing. I mean, let's not be like too rough on your face and like beat the poo out of yourself, but like you really wanna make sure that you are pressing this into the skin really well. I like to start off with a thin layer. They're like, liar!
Does that actually work better than like that foundation brush, like the one that you swirl around?
Yes, I've been telling you forever. The reason that I don't use foundation brushes anymore like I used to is because I think that it can take the product sometimes and just smear it around the skin. Whereas a beauty sponge always presses it in. And I think that sometimes when you're working with a synthetic facial brush to apply it, it can actually like soak up some of your product and not really disperse it on the skin. Where this, as weird as it is, you think like it's a sponge, it's gonna soak up your product. That's why you dampen it, because once you dampen it, it's full and it's damp. So anything that goes on there is gonna go right back onto you. And that's why I think that this gives such a prettier look, overall more natural and better coverage than an actual brush. Did I answer your question?
You did.
All right, so now I have one thin layer on my face, and that's not enough for me. You can stop here and go on with the rest of the video, go on with the rest of the routine, but because I just personally want more full coverage, I'm gonna continue to build a little bit more of it before I go back with concealer. Just doing the exact same thing, pressing it into the skin kind of vigorously, making sure that's really getting into my pores. I do use a magnetic mirror so I can see really closely, see if it's settling anywhere, and I really just sit there and focus on just jamming it into my pores.
A magnifying mirror.
You don't use a magnifying mirror?
No, you said magnetic mirror.
Magnetic. I meant magnifying mirror. Now we're gonna go in with concealer. As always, using the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer. Make sure if you want long-lasting makeup that you are not using something that is too creamy with too much oil in it. I definitely prefer something a little bit thicker because of the fact that it does sit on the skin a little bit nicer. For me personally, if I use something too creamy and too sheer, it just kind of moves around in my fine lines and my wrinkles. So I like to use something a little bit more full coverage. Even if I'm going for a more sheer look, you can get that with a full coverage concealer. You just have to use a really tiny amount of it and then just spread it around. Very gassy today. We are ridiculous. All right, now we're just gonna go in and blend all of that out. I use shade light medium because it's just a little bit lighter than my foundation, but not too much lighter. So I don't wanna make sure. We are blending, we are beating, we are living, we are dying, we are peeing, we are seeing, we are dreaming, laughing, sneezing, gagging, peeing. I'm gonna use the tip of that beauty sponge and blend that out. The entire time I basically look up because I wanna make sure that I get that product really into all those little crevices. I know it sounds kind of weird, like why would you want to put it in the crevices if it's gonna end up creasing, right? But no, actually as you look up and you do this, you'll look up again and you'll set it with powder, and that's what will keep it like in its place and not moving at all. We'll get to that in a second. I also like to make sure that I get in really nice and deep on the sides of my nose, because otherwise it will settle and crease in here throughout the day on me. So I like to really make sure that I get that concealer in those little cracks of my nose, and then I will set it really intensely later so that nothing happens. Now we're gonna go in with the Kat Von D Shade and Light Contour Palette. This is what I use to set my under eyes. It's what I've used for years. I've tried many different products and I just keep going back to this because they're just so creamy and they just look so good on the eye. They don't cake up. I know a lot of people have issues with their under eye being dry. Just make sure that you're using a really good eye cream if your under eye is dry. And again, make sure that you're using a concealer that's not drying you out even more, something that's creamy. That's why I love the Tarte Shape Tape, because even though it dries pretty matte going on, it feels so creamy underneath my eyes because I will get so dry that I actually get little bumps underneath my eye area. So I use a heavy eye cream and I, like I said, use the Tarte Shape Tape. These powders do not dry my eyes out. If I use a translucent powder underneath my eyes like everybody else does, it gets so dry. I have to use so much setting spray, so that's why I stick to this guy right here, and I'm just like, I'm obsessed. I'm gonna use the lightest shade in the palette and I'm gonna put it on my sponge just like this. And first thing I do is set my under eye before I go on to the rest of my face for many different reasons. The reason that I set my under eye first is because this is going to make sure that it does not crease throughout the day, which is obviously what this video is about, making sure that we last, right? I also do this because just using a little bit of powder underneath your under eye is gonna make it so that your under eye concealer does not move, because as you make facial expressions, like every single human being does, naturally your concealer is gonna wanna move around. It's gonna get settled up into all the little fine lines and creases that we all have, and it's gonna ball up, and then you're gonna look in the mirror after a couple hours and be like, oh, what's going on? And you're gonna have to like tap it out. So just by looking up and putting a little bit of powder underneath your eye right off the bat, you're gonna stop all of that from happening. Not to mention, I always like to use a shade a little bit lighter than my concealer and my foundation because powders and foundation will oxidize and get darker throughout the day. So if you put something on that's like same as your skin tone, once it hits the concealer and the oxygen, the oxygen, I'm getting so like chemisty up in this bitch. I'm like, who do I think I am? Where's my lab coat, Sarah? We love a good oxidization. I just like when it just gets all oxidizy, it's like things just kind of change, you know? It's like crazy. Like the oxygen with like the body and the brain. So that's why I use a shade a little bit lighter, not to mention it really gives your face that 3D like dimensional look as opposed to being all flat in one color. That's why we highlight and contour with both shimmers and mattes. So now to set the face. If you are someone who is afraid of powder, you gotta get over it and you gotta embrace it. I used to be afraid of powder because I was so dry that every powder made my face just look drier and like crepey, and I almost felt like it brought attention to like little wrinkles, and I just wanted my skin to look dewy and alive, so I never wanted to use powder. That's because I wasn't using the right powder. I didn't find my powder that worked for me. I was just using whatever was available, like when I was working at MAC, you know? So I have discovered recently, you guys have seen me talk about this a million times, this is the Hourglass Veil Translucent Setting Powder. I love, love, love this for dry skin because it almost has like a little bit of like glow to it. Not shimmer, nothing noticeable, but it just feels so good and like hydrating on the skin. If you are more on the normal to oily side, I would suggest the Cover FX Perfect Setting Powder. This is the best powder ever when it comes to baking. It really like covers you up and it keeps you matte, and it works. It's amazing. So for now, I'm gonna go in with my beauty sponge again. I'm gonna just hit it right there in the Hourglass powder. And the reason that I'm using my beauty sponge and not a brush is because I have found that pressing the powder into the skin makes it last longer throughout the day. So yesterday, I just like threw on makeup really fast and I just used a brush to just like kind of just like throw the powder on my face. And I noticed about an hour later when I looked in the car mirror, I was like, oh my gosh, my face never looks like this. And the only thing that I did differently was use a brush as opposed to my beauty sponge to press this into the skin. So it's really making sure that you're going over every square inch of your face and using a little bit at a time will not make you look dry. Do not be afraid of looking dry. Just make sure that you do not use too much. And also that's what setting sprays are for, because you can, if you start to look a little crepey, a little dry, we can fix that. I am slaying this one.
You are.
Absa. We're so mature. Absitutes. 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 Oh, bitch. Once you've put the powder on, you're in a good place. You can talk, you can move, you can take a break. So this is when I like to take my rest. My makeup really isn't that complicated. Halfway through, I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Silk was not a good idea. Just holding all the heat, all the juices. Now at this time, because I put on just a little bit of translucent powder and it didn't give me any coverage, I don't know if camera really can see, but I definitely feel like there's some areas that aren't like looking like flawlessly smooth. And I just kind of want to like even out my skin tones. I'm gonna grab a brush. I'm just going in with any brush. This is just a blush brush, honestly. I'm gonna pick up some of my Charlotte Tilbury powder in the shade 1, and I'm just going to gently put a little bit of that small layer once again over my cheeks. And I know it seems like, oh my gosh, she's using so much powder. If I use that, I would be so dry. You really won't, because you have to go in with a small amount of everything, and then we'll spray it with setting spray, go over it again, and that's what's gonna make it last for so long and not crease and not look dry and crusty. We don't want that crust.
Unless it's pizza crust.
So now that we are all completely flat and mattified, I'm gonna go in with some setting spray. I would not recommend using a setting spray that has oil in it, like a Lila B or like the new Farsali face mist right here. I would wait until the end to do that at this point. Otherwise, you're gonna make your skin kind of like greasy almost, and the powder products that we're gonna put on are not gonna go on as smoothly. So I'm gonna go in with the Morphe Continuous Setting Mist right here. Kind of reminds me of MAC Fix Plus in an aerosol can. I'm gonna just give like a light little, I'm like just keeping it really light and really casual, you know? So just like, it's no big deal, just like a subtle mist. I'm gonna sit there and just dry that off. Keep my eyes closed, and honestly at this point you should not be talking, because as you talk, you're moving the muscles in your face and you're gonna get settling in all of your fine lines. So you should just sit there like a mannequin and let it dry. This would be a great time if you felt like you put on too much powder and your skin's looking like cakey or crusty whatsoever, to go back with your damp beauty sponge and just go over those areas. You would be surprised how well this works. If it's just like, oh gosh, too much, it really will press everything into the skin and make your makeup really come together and look much more flawless and get rid of like that kind of crusty look. I hate that I'm using the word crusty so much. It's like becoming like my #1 word, and I need to eliminate it.
Yeah, cakey look.
Cakey, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're gonna bronze this bitch up. I'm gonna be using the shade Icon by Morphe. This is one of my favorite bronzers at the moment, and a really big fluffy brush, and just go in and keep that bronzer up on the higher portion of the face. Since I know that I'm gonna go in and be baking today, I will allow myself to be sloppier. If I knew that I didn't have time to bake, then I would be much more precise in going in with a different brush, but I know that I'm gonna be able to clean up, so I don't really care. Now that we have bronzer on the face, I'm gonna go in and I'm going to bake. Baking is a crucial part in making your makeup last throughout the entire day. So I'm gonna go in with the Cover FX Perfect Setting Powder right here, same sponge that I've used the entire time. I'm gonna go ahead, as you can see, this area right here is kind of like blotchy a little bit and not perfect. So I'm gonna start right up at like where my tragus piercing is, like right there by my ear. Yeah, you don't drag it across your skin? Do you even know how to bake?
No.
I didn't think so. Why even here? I'm gonna make this really full coverage because I wanna be able to take it off and have like a perfect, beautiful contoured line. Don't be afraid to get this bad boy up there. Don't bake too low on the face because then it's gonna kind of just take away the purpose of this entire process. Your contour isn't going to be where it's supposed to be, so take it up nice and high. I'm gonna do the same thing on my nose, and I'm doing this just strictly for the looks of my nose, not for anything lasting. I'm just gonna go ahead and carve this out so that when I wipe it away, in a few minutes, everything just looks a little bit more put together and shaped up. When I do this part, I always take all that powder and I get it deep into the sides of my nose right here. And that way, I don't have any creasing all day long in that area. The product never like builds up in the sides of my nose. It's so weird with makeup. It's like you look like trash until you look amazing. Right now, there's like no like end in sight. You're like, there's no way that this is gonna come together. And then in 20 minutes, you're like, oh wow, okay, yeah, you actually look pretty good.
Figured it out.
You figured it out, you whipped it up. Okay, so now I'm going to slap on my eyebrows and I'll be right back. All right, you guys, so I blacked out and did a little bit more than my brows, as you can tell, but I decided that there's really no point in doing eyeshadow and lashes on camera because it has nothing to do with making your makeup last throughout the day. You can do any eye look that you want and it's not gonna affect this process whatsoever. All right, so at this point I have been sitting here with this bake on, if you will, for about 20 minutes as I did my eyebrows and my eyeshadow and lashes as well. You do not have to leave your bake on for that long. You can take it off, honestly. 2 minutes is about enough, but I have noticed the longer that you leave it on, the more intense you are going to have results. So like, as you can see, even after I wipe it off, it's very intense. It's like glued on there. And that's good, especially for oily people, because it's gonna help your makeup not move. So if you are oily and you don't suffer with dry skin, you can bake your under eye for like 15 minutes and your makeup is not gonna go anywhere, which I can do that too. But if I do that, I then have to go in with a ton of setting spray to really like, what's the word, emulsify it, just like really blend it like into the skin and make it one again, because it will dry my under eye out big time. Like I love the Rihanna setting powder, like the lavender shade so much, but it does dry my under eye out a lot. So I have to go with a lot of setting spray afterwards. And speaking of that, I wanna give you guys one quick tip on how to refresh your makeup. Let's say you get ready in the morning, you go to work, and then at lunchtime you wanna like touch up real quick. Touching up your makeup is actually a lot easier than a lot of people think. And all you need is a setting spray, your damp beauty sponge. You can use any setting spray, honestly. You can use the Morphe continuous setting sprays, that's what I used earlier. Or you can take like a little compact guy with you like this. This is the Tatcha Luminous Dewy Skin Mist. If you're really dry, I would suggest something like this. All you're gonna do is spray it directly on your sponge, get a little on there, make sure it's not soaked. I always kind of like press it on my hand first, and then just go in and tap it over your face. Tap it over the under eye, tap it over the chin, tap it over anything, and it will get any additional product that's like sitting in any creases. If you're starting to look cakey whatsoever, or if things are even fading away, you can do this and then go in and apply a little bit more powder over top. But just going in with a damp sponge and a little setting spray just brings the face back to life. I almost feel like my makeup looks better like 4 or 5 hours later once I do a touch up. There's something about like when it's perfectly fresh that's not like, it looks good, but for some reason it looks better like a couple hours in. Once you do a touch up, then you're like, oh, there it is. Like there she is, like life comes back to the skin. And honestly, it's this trick. It's doing the setting spray, the sponge, and then if you need to add a little bit more powder, highlight, blush, whatever you do, that would be your time to do it. All right, I'm gonna toss on some blush. I'm gonna go in with MAC Cosmetics Peaches. This is one of my favorite blush colors ever. It's super universal. And I'm going to just put this on the cheeks. Something that I like to do is put a little extra blush when I get ready. When you think you're done, do like one more layer, because blush does tend to fade so fast, no matter if you're oily, dry, It doesn't matter your skin type, it's gonna be the fastest thing to fade on your face, more so than eyeshadow or anything else. All right, so now at this point, my under eye is looking really good. It's not looking like dusty, it's not looking crunchy, it's not looking, I'm trying to think of cakey, clammy, crusty. We're in a good place. So I'm gonna take a little bit more of that same Kat Von D powder from earlier, and I'm going to bring it from the corner down and just kind of swoop it towards the blush, and you'll see the difference between this side of my face and this side, that this is just gonna bring a little bit more light and almost like a filter effect to the cheeks. It's also gonna lighten up the blush just a little bit, if you can see the difference.
It's like a veil.
Can you see it?
Yeah, it's subtle.
Okay, good.
Oh yeah, you can see it.
All right, so I'm also gonna take that, I'm gonna put it on the chin. You'll see just bring a little light to all the places that I place it. I'm gonna leave the nose alone because I already contoured my beak, and I'm gonna put it on my forehead right between my brows and swoop it upward. Again, if you are feeling like you are too dry and powdery at this point, do not do this step, totally skip it. I'm just doing it because my skin is looking really good. And also the setting spray has a lot to do with that. Using like a setting spray in the middle of our face the way we did helps your face so much throughout the day. I'm gonna go in with a little bit more of the Charlotte Tilbury powder in number 2. And this time I'm not using it like on my face because that would be way too much. I'm gonna actually use it just to stamp along the bottom half of my cheek. You can see I'm like literally carving out because I feel like that bake, yeah, it did a great job, but it felt a little messy, especially here in the front. So I'm just gonna stamp that in and then go back and kind of wipe that away so we don't have like a super harsh line, but still, it's gonna clean it up. I'm gonna go in my Lancome Absolute powder. I'm gonna put a little bit of that on my face. I'm not gonna highlight intensely today. I'm only gonna use this powder. I'm gonna put it on the apples and then just drag it back, keeping it kind of low on the cheeks just to kind of like bring this entire cheek to life. I'm like, listen guys, I'm really gonna keep this highlight really, really simple. So now before I put on my lip or my bottom mascara on my lashes, I'm going to spritz my face one more time with the exact same setting spray. I'm gonna do like a nice fine mist over my entire face. And again, the key when you're doing this, very subtle, very subtle.
Just a light mist.
The tip is to not talk, not do anything while it's drying down because that's when you're gonna get creases. So try to keep your face as still as possible. Once your face is pretty dry, if you wanna make your highlight pop even more, what did I say about keeping my highlight settled today? Just said.
Never happens.
I was like, I'm gonna really keep it settled. But if you wanna make it pop even more, you can go back in at this point, and because you just sprayed that spray, it's gonna make it beam a lot harder, and it actually looks really natural if you do this technique. Do your highlight after you spray a setting spray. I'm gonna press that into the skin. So again, I don't want it to be too intense. Absolutes. Okay, let me throw on a lip and my bottom mascara and I'll be right back. All right, you guys, so that is it for this look and this video. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you picked up a lot of tips and tricks and hopefully learned some things. And if you have any questions, comments about how to make your makeup last longer, please feel free to tweet me. What else is there? A carrier pigeon would be appreciated. Seriously, leave a comment on this video, Instagram, Twitter. Those are like my main things I'm always looking at. A lot of people are like, I DM'd you and you didn't respond, but honestly, that's not where I'm at. Like if you really wanna contact me, Twitter is the place to do it, YouTube and Instagram. Instagram and Twitter are the number 2 for sure. I would love to talk to you guys about makeup. I would love to help you out with any questions that you have on how to make your makeup last longer and just how to feel your most beautiful. So yeah, that's it you guys. I love you so much and I will see you in my next one. Bye.